This video discusses the alliance partners Germany is prophesied to have in place to start the Third World War and prophecies before the World War can start that have already been fulfilled. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. Part 1 video in this series discussed Bible prophecies that show that the start of the World War is very near. The World War will be fought between Germany and its alliance partners against the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. I am going to repeat some information from Part 1 video to make it clear. Part 1 video showed that the first indication that the start of the Third World War is very near is that God has an overall 7,000-year master plan for salvation of mankind, in which He has allotted the first 6,000 years to mankind. Then He will begin taking over the kingdoms of the world and set up His kingdom with Jesus Christ and the saints ruling for 1,000 years, so that humanity can then compare and contrast its own ways with God's way. Almost all of humanity will choose God's way and qualify to receive eternal life as God's literal sons and daughters. According to Church of God calculations, the first 6,000 years of man's rule since Adam's creation ended on the holy day called the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Trumpets, September 19, 2020. Since then, God has begun the process of taking over the kingdoms of the world. Second indication that the start of the World War is very near is the last hour prophecy in 1 John chapter 2 verse 18, very ably interpreted by Gerald R. Flurry, head of the Philadelphia Church of God. Those verses in the Revised Standard Version state, "Children, it is the last hour," translated as last time in the King James Version. And as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would no doubt have continued with us, but they went out that they might be made manifest that they were not all of us. This prophecy mentions one Antichrist and then many Antichrists who were part of God's true church but then departed from it and opposed God and Jesus Christ. Just before his death, Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, through whom God founded the modern era of his church, appointed Joseph W. Tkach Sr. as his successor. He dismantled everything God had restored to his church through Mr. Armstrong because he was a German masquerader, who are people of German ancestry living in white countries. By doing so, Joseph W. Tkach Sr. joined Satan's side because Germans are Satan worshippers, and turned against Christ, thus becoming an antichrist. Joseph W. Tkach Sr. then appointed his son Joseph Tkach Jr. and others in top positions in God's church, known as the Worldwide Church of God at that time, but today called Grace Communion International, who all proved to be German masqueraders and were in fact even more assiduous than Joseph W. Tkach Sr. and doing away with all the doctrines and policies God had restored through Mr. Armstrong. Thus, there were many antichrists who all went out from the true church of God, but were not of us. In fact, Revelation 3 verse 9 states, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you." Meaning that these are people with a Philadelphian attitude within God's church. So this Revelation 3:9 identifies them as the synagogue of Satan within God's church. Joseph Tkach Jr. succeeded his father as head of the Worldwide Church of God at his death in 1995. Now, those who remained in the Worldwide Church of God were not the only antichrists. Many organizations separated from the Worldwide Church of God when doctrines were changed, beginning in 1989 with the Philadelphia Church of God. The prominent ones among them are the United Church of God, Church of God, a worldwide association, Philadelphia Church of God, Living Church of God, and the Restored Church of God. The terrible tragedy is that on April 19, 2019, all leaders and employees, with tens of thousands of other members and their families in these churches, participated in murders of genuine members of God's true church to cement their commitment to the German masquerader side. Thus, they joined Satan's side and became Antichrist. Genuine members who did not participate in this wickedness may number only 7 to 15% of the total number of these churches. That is how the ongoing fulfillment of the last hour prophecy indicate that we are close to the start of the Third World War. In prophecy, 1 hour equals 1,000. 1 day equals 1,000 years, as 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 8 states. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day. That means 1 hour would equal 1,000 divided by 24, or 41 and 2/3 years till the completion of God's first 6,000 years in His plan, which is called man's age, and the establishment of God's kingdom, allowing 3.5 years for the Great Tribulation. So we have 38 and 1/6 years, or 38 years and 2 months, from the time the fulfillment of the last hour began till the defeat of the United States, British Commonwealth nation Israel by a German-led alliance is completed. If we start counting the beginning of the last hour when Mr. Armstrong passed away on January 16, 1986, and the first Antichrist, Joseph Tkach Sr., became the head of the Worldwide Church of God, we come to approximately March-April of 2024, when the defeat of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel is completed and the Great Tribulation begins. If we allow 1 year for the World War and the famines and diseases that follow before the 30-day war that defeats the United States, Britain, and Israel, we can see that the world war could begin at any time. The third indication that the start of the Third World War is near is the prophecies in Revelation 10. Verse 6 mentions a time of delay no longer in the beginning of the events pictured by the 7 seals of the book of Revelation. The very next event mentioned after the world reached the time of delay no longer is mentioned in verse 11, which states, "And he said to me, you must prophesy again about many peoples and nations and tongues, meaning in many languages and kings." I started preaching my weekly messages on December 2nd, 2006. I read these messages in English from my computer at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday, which are then made available to every human being in his or her own language by God's angels. Don't take my word for it. Verify it yourself by tuning your ear to hear the messages, and you will hear them. However, I believe I was commissioned to do this work when I was asked to start a blog sometime in early 2005. Thus, 19 years or one-time cycle after I was commissioned to do God's work, as mentioned in Revelation 10 verse 11, would bring us to January-March of 2024. This too points to 38 years and 2 months after the beginning of the last hour being near, so that the Great Tribulation can begin at any time. Now let's look at alliance partners that Germany is prophesied to have in this war. We will see that they are already in place. Bible prophecies indicate that Germany will make alliances with other nations to resurrect the Holy Roman Empire and prosecute the war against the USA, Britain, and Israel alliance. Though we did not see it this way, but prophecies in Ezekiel indicate that the first German alliance will be with people within the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. Now that we see the alliance, Germany's alliance partners are clearly German masqueraders and their allies in our nations. Ezekiel 8 verse 12 states, "Have you seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark?" So God is discussing the house of Israel here, which is primarily America and British Commonwealth nations. Then verses 18 to 19 state, "They have filled the land with violence and have returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put a branch," meaning a tree branch, "to their nose." They are basically poking a tree branch into God's nostrils with their actions and thoughts. Then God responds, "Therefore will I also deal in fury. My eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them." We now know that it is the German masqueraders who have filled the land with violence, targeting non-German whites. They are Satan worshippers and stick a tree branch in God's nostrils. The prophecy that shows this is a conspiracy by German masqueraders among themselves to destroy Israel and God's church is given in Ezekiel 11 verses 1 to 2. "Moreover, the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the east gate of the Lord's house." God's house or temple is a symbol for God's church, which looks eastward. "And behold, at the door of the gate 25 men, among whom I saw Jazaniah the son of Azur and Pelatiah the son of Benaiah, princes of the people." So these are top leaders of the German masqueraders. Then verse 2, "Then said he unto me, Son of man, these are the men that devise mischief," meaning they hatch a conspiracy, "and give wicked counsel in this city." The wicked counsel is to destroy whites of non-German ancestry. Then chapter 9 provides more details on the slaughter in verses 5 to 6. "And to the others he said in my hearing, Go after him through the city and smite. Let not your eyes spare, neither have pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children, and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary." Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. And he said unto them, "Defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain. Go forth." And they went forth and slew in the city. And it came to pass, while they were slaying them, and I was left, that I fell upon my face and cried and said, "O Lord God, will you destroy all the residue of Israel in your pouring out your fury upon Jerusalem?" Then said he unto me, "The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, The Lord has forsaken the earth, and the Lord sees not. And as for me also, my eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head." There are other prophecies that show that the existence of German masqueraders in our midst was prophesied. Revelation 3 verse 9 indicates a synagogue of Satan active within God's church, which say they are Jews and are not, but lie. We simply could not have imagined the import of this prophecy. Most German masqueraders with German names, not only in the church but America, also claim that they are Jews, but they are lying. That's why the synagogue of Satan, meaning they worship Satan, also applies to the physical house of Israel, meaning America and British Commonwealth nations in Israel, in addition to God's church. Now they stand exposed, and we know that they are solidly in alliance with the Germans and Chinese. Therefore, the prophesied activities are given in Ezekiel 11 verse 6. "You have multiplied your slain in the city, and have filled the streets thereof with the slain." This has been fulfilled in the 10 million murders and 60 million abortions in America. Filling the cities with the slain and violence could not have happened if all Americans identified themselves as Israelites. Thus the prophesied German masquerader alliance with the Germans and Chinese, which we did not anticipate but is indicated in Ezekiel's prophecy, is already in place. which Germany started building against the United States, Britain, and Israel soon after the end of World War II. Their control in government and the military is demonstrated by the US and British government's support for Ukraine against Russia, a war instigated by Germany. Yet the United States has budgeted $113 billion in aid in 2022 alone to Ukraine. If the US continues beyond May 2023, more financial assistance will be appropriated for Ukraine in 2023. The UK is the second biggest donor nation to Ukraine after the United States with $7.43 billion in aid to Ukraine. In comparison, Germany has committed $2.12 billion in total aid of all kinds to Ukraine. Thus, while Germany instigated the Ukraine-Russia war, it is being funded mainly by the American and British people, when Germany's top goal is to attack the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel, exterminate the white or non-German ancestry and their allies, and take over the land for themselves. However, another signal tells me that German masqueraders don't have complete control of the United States government. If they did, they would have been murdering Americans and British whites of non-German ancestry at a torrid pace. I don't see that happening. Instead, I am seeing German masqueraders and their allies, particularly African Americans, who have murdered whites of non-German ancestry over the past 5 to 6 decades, being executed at an increasingly faster rate. Though they still continue to murder whites of non-German ancestry, the murderers are swiftly brought to justice. Top masquerader leaders in the United States are billionaires like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. The most recent example of a masquerader brought to justice is the killing of private equity investor Thomas Lee, who was worth $2 billion and was found dead of a gunshot wound to his office in New York on Thursday, February 23, 2023. The death was ruled a suicide, but the truth is that Thomas Lee was executed for the murder he committed in his younger days. I am sure there are other such masquerader billionaire murderers who are in the non-masquerader sites awaiting execution. Therefore, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger must have begun to feel the heat and are ready to give the order to start the World War, with Germany and China start the World War themselves. Further readiness to start a civil war is indicated by the train derailment in the town of East Palestine, Ohio, on February 3, 2003, when 38 Norfolk Southern Corp railways derailed. The name of the town, East Palestine, should give us a clue as to the kind of people who live there. Die-hard Palestinians, or die-hard masqueraders, because Palestinians are German allies. From the response of the authorities and information from my sources indicates that the town folk were responsible for the disaster. They perhaps did not know that the train was carrying toxic materials. Therefore, they did not know they would be causing a potential environmental disaster for themselves. The attitude of the authorities seems to be to let the culprits, the East Palestine folks, stew in the mess that they have deliberately created. A second Norfolk Southern train derailed in Springfield, Ohio on Saturday, March 4, 2023. Though some of the cars carried hazardous materials, none leaked. This too was not an accident but the work of German masqueraders. In fact, just in Ohio, there have been 4 train derailments over the past 5 months. Besides train derailments occurring fairly regularly in the United States, over 1,000 in a year, and passenger airline near missing, being an indication that German masqueraders have become more active in causing disasters in the United States. We are also experiencing unprecedented seasons for the fire seasons for the past 5 to 6 years. These fires are deliberately set by masqueraders to destroy much property and lives. Perpetrators are similarly arrested. There have also been attacks on the electric grid in the diverse places. With all these incidents, German masqueraders are signaling that they are prepared and ready for a civil war. They are armed to the teeth with assault-style weapons and are ready to start a deadly shooting war. They are ready to burn cities by setting them on fire. They are ready to drastically disrupt railroad, air, and road transportation to make the consumption of food, medicines, and other critical goods impossible to exacerbate families and diseases. They are ready to destroy the electric grid, which itself will quickly kill the sick, weak, and the very elderly and the young. Hospitals would shut down as it would be impossible for doctors and nurses to function. In short, German masqueraders have been indicating for the past 7 to 8 years that they are ready for a deadly civil war in the United States and British Commonwealth nations, and that they could kill hundreds of millions in these countries. Just as an aside, I've been participating in a deadly civil war for the past 8 to 10 years, and I've been storing food and advocating keeping food on hand for your family that would last at least a year and if possible 2 years. Now, most nations in the world will be shocked to learn that the elements of resurrecting the Holy Roman Empire for the seventh and last time are already in place. This is prophesied in Revelation 17 and 13. Revelation 17 verses 12 to 13 state, "And the 10 horns, horn is a symbol for rulers, and the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour, meaning a short time, with the beast," which is the German dictator. "These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." These verses indicate that the 10 rulers are of one mind with the German leader. They can be of one mind only if they are led by the same power which in Revelation 13:4 is identified as the dragon, which is another name for Satan, the devil. It is no longer a secret that the Germans worship Satan, the devil. European leaders being of one mind means that they all worship the devil. That's possible only if the European leaders are all German masqueraders. Indications are that Germans have already succeeded in placing German masqueraders as their allies as heads of most European Union nations. Thus, when Germany begins the war, it will be easy for them to give all power and authority over their countries to the German leader to prosecute the war. If there is any odd European nation that does not have the German masquerader as head, I cannot afford to commit suicide by opposing Germany. It cannot afford to commit suicide by opposing Germany when the rest of Europe is already with them. When Germany succeeds in defeating the United States, Britain, and Israel, the German leader could then divide Europe into an administrative district and appoint his own rulers over them, keeping the present leaders, if he is a German masquerader, and developing one or two others that he likes with his own men. This thus is the strongest indication that the prophesied seventh resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire is already in place and will manifest itself to the world as soon as the Third World War starts. As Revelation 13 verse 14 indicates, when the European alliance partner manifests itself as the Holy Roman Empire, truly the world will worship the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast, who is able to mock with war with him?" So Germany's decade-long preparation to fulfill end of the end-time prophecies is bearing fruit. Now let's come to the Indian subcontinent. Germany and China's alliance partners in Asia, particularly in the Indian subcontinent, include Narendra Modi's government in India. Their target for destruction is the Sikhs and Punjabis in Punjab state in India and Punjabis in Punjab state in Pakistan because they fought the Germans in both world wars. Narendra Modi's government has been ready to start the war with Punjabis ever since it was given nuclear weapons and ICBM technology by Germany and China a few years ago. Recent developments that indicate China's readiness to start the war targeting the Punjabis is that on February 24, 2023, there was a riot in Punjab state in India to free a Sikh named Amritpal Singh Sandhu for agitating for Khalistan, a separate home state, after the state governments had put him under detention. We know now that Sandhus and Siddhus are not Punjabi Sikhs but Rajputs of Rajasthan state who were German allies masquerading as Punjabi Sikhs. Tens of thousands of his followers broke barriers and attacked the jail to free Amritpal Singh Sandhu. Besides Rajputs, there are many Pathans, also known as Pashtuns, whose origins are in Afghanistan and northwest Pakistan, who are also masquerading as Punjabi and Punjabi Sikhs in both India and Pakistan. By writing, these Rajput and Pathan masqueraders were demonstrating their willingness to start a deadly civil war in Punjab state in India as well as Pakistan. A few months earlier, the Pakistani Pathan leader Imran Khan led massive agitations in Pakistan cities to force early elections to indicate a strong following and readiness to start a civil war in Pakistan. There are many Pashtuns masquerading as Punjabis in Pakistan as well as represented in government and the military. In fact, the Pakistan government is controlled by these masqueraders. They have deliberately run the Pakistan economy into the ground so that Pakistan will be in no position to respond adequately to an attack by the Afghanistan Taliban regime when it attacks Pakistan and Punjab and Kashmir states in India. It convert with start of the Third World War, or in concert with start of the Third World War by Germany and China. Germany and China have been preparing the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, which is controlled by Pashtuns, to attack Pakistan and India ever since it took control of the country. German masqueraders in the government in the United States conveniently left $80 billion worth of military equipment for the Taliban regime to use. The Pathan masquerader German in Pakistan could also turn over Pakistani president to him, but more likely not resist the Afghanistan Taliban when they begin their attack. In addition, countries in Southeast Asia cannot go outside an alliance with China because China has built dams to control the waters of the rivers that are the lifeblood of Southeast and South Asia. It could easily starve these nations with droughts by controlling the flow of the rivers or kill tens of millions by flooding these nations. Thus, German and Chinese alliance partners in the Indian subcontinent and Asia are prepared to do their part in the Third World War by destroying the Punjabis in India and Pakistan, particularly the Sikhs. Psalm 83 indicates a German alliance with the Arabs, Edomites, and other tribes which now populate Iraq, Syria, Egypt, North Africa, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and the Gaza Strip. Many of those mentioned in the psalm are part of the people known as the Palestinians, such as Arabs, Amalekites, and Edomites. The psalm indicates in verse 7, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, of Moab and the Hagarenes, of Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. The phrase the tabernacles of is an indication that people from other nations will be participating in the coalition armies. For example, Iran is allied with China. Other people from Muslim countries could join their armies. Arabs include Syria and Iraq, which are ready to join the coalition to attack Israel. Egypt and other non-African Arab nations have very large populations that have been allied with the Germans for decades, such as the Muslim Brotherhood. Israel regularly carries out air raids in Syria to prevent weapons reaching Hezbollah and Lebanon. All these nations are deadly enemies of the Jews in Israel. Thus, the German coalition prophesied in Psalm 83 is also ready to pounce on Israel during the Third World War. Most blacks of Africans in America, Britain, Canada, and the Caribbean countries in South America are allied with the Germans. However, China, with its Belt and Road Initiative, has roped in most of Africa into its alliance. It is in a position to use coercion if necessary to keep African nations as alliance partners. Now, Daniel 11 verses 40 to 45 indicates a king of the south, which is likely a Muslim leader based in the Middle East, which I believe could be Egypt or Ethiopia based, though I'm not dogmatic about it. He could also be an Iranian, but the alliance headed by the King of the South is bigger than just the Arab world. It indicates much of Africa in that alliance. China's BRI scheme may have created the conditions for the bigger alliance to emerge quickly. In prophecy, Black Africa is mentioned under the names Kush and Ethiopia. Arab Africa is probably Arab Africa and probably is mentioned under Egypt and sometimes includes Syria. The indication that Black Africa will be allied with the Islamic leader in provided the leader is provided Daniel 11:42-43, which mentions the attack on the king of the north as the king of the south and the countries that are king of the north loots. Ethiopia is mentioned among them. Of the king, Ethiopia is mentioned among them. The verses state, "He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But we shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps." Further details about the defeat of the king of the north, Egypt, and Black Africa are provided in Ezekiel 30 verses 1-5. The word of the Lord came to me again, saying, "Son of man, prophesy, and say, Thus says the Lord God, Wail, woe to the day, for the day is near, even the day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds, the time of the Gentiles. The sword shall come upon Egypt, and great Egypt shall be in anguish in Ethiopia, when the slain fall in Egypt, and they take away her breath, and her foundations are broken down. Ethiopia, Libya, Lydia, all the mingled people, Chub and the men of the lands who are filled shall fall, make them by the sword." This prophecy mentions the day of the Lord, which is the last 1 year of the Great Tribulation. Hence, this prophecy is about the defeat of the Islamic alliance or Southern Alliance by the king of the north, and includes Ethiopia, meaning Black Africa. Now, downfall of the Islamic African Republic at the hands of the king of the north provides relief to the American, British, and Jewish captives. This is indicated in Isaiah 43 verses 1-6. "But now, thus says the Lord, who created you, O Jacob, and he formed you not in vain." Who created you, O Jacob, and he formed you, O Israel. I gave Egypt for your ransom, Ethiopia, blacks in Africa, and Sheba, Dravidians of India, a branch of the black races with wavy hair rather than curly hair as in Africa, in your place. Since you were precious in my sight, you have been honored, and I have loved you. Therefore I will give you men for you and people for your life. These verses indicate that Sheba, the son of Cush means Ethiopia, and Genesis 10 verse 7, or South India could be part of the Southern Alliance. We know South India is solidly in the German-Chinese alliance. Now, China has already gained great influence in Latin America by controlling the Panama Canal and great relationships with the drug and crime cartels in Mexico and other business enterprises in Brazil and other South American countries. Germany and China already have strong trade relationships and deals in the region. Then, when the Holy Roman Empire manifests itself, he will exercise great influence and control over Latin America, because all nations in the continent are equal. Thus, all the prophesied coalitions with the Germans and that take place in the Third World War are already prepared and well armed to attack the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. In addition, timing of prophetic events, considering what the last hour means and God's 7,000-year plan for mankind, that conditions are now ripe for Germany to begin the war any day. Again, only God the Father knows the actual date and hour, time of Jesus Christ's return. He has given full freedom to the Germans to decide the actual moment to start the World War. But the dark, dense clouds of war are gathering into a storm that indicates the Third World War is not going to be far off. Now, in part 3 video, I will discuss prophecies that likely indicate what Germany and China's war strategy will be. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos, important world events, health war watch, politics, international business, how Bible and prophecy is playing an important role in world affairs, advance on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channels and Facebook channels, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos.